Welcome to Short and to the Point, a podcast from the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Here's your host, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Short and to the Point. Jess Kleinschmidt here for the Comeback and Awful Announcing. More NFL stuff to go over today. But before I get into that, we wanted to wish a huge congratulations to last week's guest, Ryan Jensen. He officially announced his retirement. Today is Friday, February 2nd, when I'm recording this congratulatory message. We talked a little bit last week with him about his future. He never used the official R word, and the R word is retire, but it's good to see that he made that decision after 9 seasons. He earned himself a Pro Bowl selection. He did get a Super Bowl ring while being the center for the GOAT, Tom Brady, during his time with the Tampa Bay Bucks. So after 9 seasons, he, of course, was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, my team, for those of you who don't know. So congrats to him, and thank so much to him. And then, of course, Garrett Gilkey for stopping by on the show. This week, we have Adam Rank of NFL Network joining me. When I talk about some of the people who believed in me from the beginning of my career when I first got started, Adam Rank definitely comes to mind. He told me once, he's like, I'm a big fan of your content, anything that you're doing, because he's, despite working in football media, he has a big love for baseball. He's an Angels fan, so we're going to ask him a little bit more about the heartbreak that is Shohei Ohtani, who, of course, is still staying in LA, just trading in Angels red for Dodger blue. And we touch on the upcoming Super Bowl and, of course, his background in stand-up comedy. So here is my chat with NFL Network's Adam Rank. Well, I told you Adam would be here, and Adam is very much here. Adam, thanks for joining me today. It's so good to see you, my friend.
It has been far too long. I've missed you, but of course I've been able to follow you and follow your new endeavors. And I got to tell you, each and every time that I see you, I'm prouder and prouder of you. You've been killing it. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on the show with you, but it's just great to see you.
Well, and from the beginning, you were one of my biggest cheerleaders. I feel like that's important to talk about because I feel like I've lived a billion different lives and we've all dealt with it before. So before we even get started, just thank you, because I know you believed in me. You just always cheered me on, and I'm so thankful for that.
Well, I'm a huge fan. I've always enjoyed your work going way back. I mean, before even NBC Bay Area and everything like that. So I'm happy to see how well you've done, and it's all you. And but yeah, anything I could have done to have helped, it was my pleasure. And
you did. And actually, I wanted to talk to you. We'll get into baseball a little bit later because I know you more of a baseball guy than football, right. But the world knows you more for your football stuff. And it's kind of interesting to watch. You've been in the industry for a while, so the media side certainly changed as far as football coverage has come. What are some of those changes you noticed from when you first got into it?
Wow, it has been so different because going way back to when I was an intern with NFL Publishing, it was all PR. Like everything that the NFL put out in NFL.com was just starting, and we were doing all these publications, and it was all just happy news. Like, oh, look at this. The NFL is the greatest thing. And we would put out these kids clubs newsletters and the NFL report, which was, I mean, looking back at it now, it's just hilarious. Like even nowadays, like there's no major corporation that behaves this way, but we've seen it. And I would go back to, and it's not recent, but going back to 2010, let's say right 2009, 2010, we were sitting there, a person that we're very familiar with, Justin Hathaway. We've both worked for Justin Hathaway, and he came in as one of the editors of NFL.com. And this was still at a time when we were just pumping out AP stories, press releases. Hey, what do we do if there's a negative story? And it's completely changed. And I remember, you know, we used to do these things called blogs that nobody remembers, or even podcasts. And if you ever put any sort of personality into it, like the editors would be like, no, you got to pull that off. We can't be too glib or anything like that. And Justin was one of the guys who helped change that. And then, of course, we started the Around the NFL, which has grown into one of our biggest podcasts, or one of the biggest football podcasts in general, with Dan Hanzus. We got Mark Sessler and, of course, Greg Rosenthal. And so you look at it now and the coverage, and it's more personality driven. And I think that to me has been the biggest change, and the ability to go out there and realize like, hey, you know what? We're real people who cover the NFL. And I obviously am a Bears fan, and people know me as a member of the Chicago Bears, and people will claim that I'm biased. And I understand that when it comes to the Bears, like, yeah, I'm absolutely biased, but I try to be as fair as possible. But it is cool that we can kind of go out there and you don't have to hide from it. Jessica Kleinschmidt grew up an Oakland A's fan. That is something to be embraced.
Yeah.
It's not something to shy away from. Roflo is a Houston guy. Like, that's awesome. Like, people, like, there is a connection to baseball. And for us to pretend like, oh, I didn't grow up a fan of this team, and all of a sudden, no. So that wall has been shattered, and that's been one of the biggest changes. And it's got its good parts and it's got its bad parts, but I feel for the most part, it's good.
And I feel like when it comes to being a fan, that was kind of an interesting transition too, because you want to be fair. Like, I obviously have taken on the reporter hat. I've taken on the sideline. I've taken on what have you. Was it easy for you to kind of balance that out? Because you want to stay true to the news. Like, we don't want to lie, because you do have the NFL platform behind you, but you still want to embrace the personality. How do you find that balance?
Well, you got to be fair, and you can't be, you don't want to make things up, so to speak. Not that you would, but you want to be fair, and you want to give everybody a fair shot. And like, when Detroit's been doing really well, like, I'll admit, like, you know what, this is a very good team. They're built well through the trenches. And you try to be as positive as possible and try to be as fair and give them a fair shake. The Packers might not ever get a fair shake from me. And I think that we've come to an understanding now, like, that's just the way it's going to be. When Jordan Love throws an interception, while the rest of the media is running around like, what a great player, but like, it was a great interception. And they got the youngest team in the league. Well, I can come in as the realist and be like, you know what, they were lucky to get this far. He's gotten away with this stuff too much, which, again, my ultimate defense is the truth. It's like, did Jordan Love throw an interception to end that game? He absolutely did. I'm not making anything up. But of course, people just will understand, like, my point of view is going to be a little bit skewed. And I think it's easier when you just know, like, somebody's that way. And if the Packers fans don't want to listen to me, which is fair, like, that's totally cool. But I think for the most part, and I know that during the course of the season, there were some fan bases who thought I was unfair or biased or anything like that. Because I think that fans always feel like that the media is against their team. And I am here to tell you, the media, for the most part, the media is not. The media only is against the Angels. That's the only, I can confirm that 100%. But other than that, Major League Baseball is against the Angels. So, like, that is the only one. But otherwise, nobody hates your favorite team. But you know what? We do have a little bit of built-in bias, but we do strive to be as fair as possible.
And, I want to go back. I'm glad you brought up Justin Hathaway, because he discovered me with NBC, but I remember we didn't have a true A's beat reporter, and he pulled me into the office and he's like, you're going to be doing some more A's coverage, but be Jess during that process. So I'm glad you shared that story, because when you work in a newsroom, I was terrified I was going to screw something up. But he said, no, like, be Jess. You don't have to be Susan Slusser. Susan Slusser's doing amazing, and be Jess. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And then, the term blog always kind of poked at me. At the beginning, she or he is a blogger. They're a joke. Yeah. Now you can get some of the best news from a blog, and people are making money off of it. You have the recipe blogs that I have to scroll through to get to the actual recipe, but they're still there. How have you noticed the term blog kind of transitioning over the years?
Well, I mean, like, for real young people that don't remember what blogs truly were when they came up. So it is a different perception. And it's interesting because blogs, in a way, like, might have, like, really hurt some newspapers and things like that. But what was a change that was needed? And I know that growing up, I never understood the mentality of, like, working in a newsroom at major metropolitan players, like how bummed people were to be covering sports, and how, grizzled, and like, people were just like, not for a lot. I kind of like didn't want to be, always complained about everything. Like, it was like, I understand that you don't make a lot of money doing this, but it's still a labor of love. And you're like, I make enough money to provide for my children. It's fine.
Yeah.
And one thing that I like about bloggers is that there was a real passion and a real zeal for going out there and covering the teams. And I think one of the things about Justin and what he was talking about you being Jess, is that you want your enthusiasm to come through. You never want to become so jaded that you're like, do you even like what you're doing? Like, why are you here? There's people, and some of them write for The Athletic, who you feel like, why are you here? Can you go cover somebody else? If this is this miserable for you, like go do something else. But that is one of the cool things about blogs is that for the most part, you get a lot of great insight. And you get a lot of great, somebody who's there all the time who really wants to be in the weeds and covering a team. And that is where we're getting our best journalists coming up. It's kind of like, if you think back, and to use the movie industry, for example, if you think back like a number of years, like Kevin Smith was this guy who made independent movies. And the guys who came through now, like the next Kevin Smith is not making Clerks or Mallrats or anything like that. They're making YouTube videos. It's Tom Grassi making videos. Brandon Perna making videos. They're not making major motion pictures. They're making videos. And similarly, people are not growing up being like, you know what? I want to be the lead beat writer for the LA Times. You're like, I just want to cover the Bears. I just want to talk about the Angels. I just want to talk about the things that I want to talk about. And then you draw in your audience that way because you have a connection to them. You're relatable. You're going through it. Like, I think that, and I'm not a huge, I don't do a lot of Angels reporting, but I think people follow along with me because like, I'm feeling it. Like I really sit there and feel it. And when the Bears lose, like I feel it. Like it's one of those things. And it's something that people as sports fans love to connect to. Like, it's cool. Like I will sometimes love the overall national view. I'll hit up RoFlo and be like, yeah, tell me what are people really saying about the Angels? But at the same time, like, I don't care. Like I don't care. Like just give it to me straight and I'll go to Victor Rojas or whomever and get it that way.
And it's so funny because when I first started, we don't think about ourselves an extension of the fans because it's almost taboo. You don't want to think about it from that regard. But I feel like I had better access because the players knew I was a direct source to the fans, and mine was very like a lot of feel good stories, but you're right. Like little nuances. I think they appreciated that more. You had to stay true to the news, of course, when it comes to injury and transactions and those types of things, but I'm glad
of course
it's broadening up. And you mentioned the term realist, and when it comes to you and how you portray yourself and how you present yourself, you're not afraid to not only be yourself, but even to be wrong. So whether it's a prediction, it's definitely so you have your own like YouTube stream of things like this is when the things that Adam Rank got incorrect, but you always own it. So where does that come from?
I mean, you want to be authentic and you want to be able to go out there and admit like it's out there in the world. There's nothing you can do to change that. It's kind of like when you're doing stand-up comedy, like, immediately whether something's funny or not. And like, if people aren't laughing, you can't fake it and be like, no, that was funny. And like, try to explain the joke or anything like that. Similarly, when you go out there and do these predictions, like you have to wear it. And one of the things that really caught fire with me was that a lot of times in like Total Access would go out there and they would have David Carr and Baldinger and M-Rob and those guys do predictions, but they would do like one division a day. And then like, you could get away with like having records that don't make sense. I go through and predict every game. And so if somebody is going to go 13-4, somebody's going to have a bad record. So it's the accountability of just being like, oh, like, some people could just go out there and predict everybody to go 10-7. And then the math doesn't add up and you're like, there's no accountability. So I will embrace the accountability. And there are times where it goes horribly wrong. Anybody who lives in the Bay Area remembers a couple of years ago with the 49ers. This season, it was the Cleveland Browns, who I had it as a 6-10 team, 6-11. They were 11-6. It was the exact opposite. And it's funny because when you put out these predictions, the fans of the team that you're not as hyper about will come after you. And the Browns fans were like, how did you, or even going back in hindsight, and they're like, how did you look at this roster and think that this team wasn't going to win this amount of games? And you're like, okay, you know who else said that? The Titans said that. The Commanders said that. Both those teams were brutal. And the Browns got away with it because of the way that their team was constructed. Like, and I'm getting too in the weeds. So, but I think it's important to be like, yeah, you can see it. Like, I'll own it. And it's like, at the same time, like, I was wrong. Like, okay, like it happens. Like, I know some people don't like to go back. And again, it goes back to, we had these older consultants who used to work for us that were always like, you know what? Never look back. Just always look forward. You don't have to go back and own your mistakes. And I'm like, that's some of the dumbest advice I've ever heard, because people will give up on you and they'll do their thing. And I know like some fan bases think like Rank's always wrong, but there are some fan bases who are like, this guy's always on. Because I've been, especially in the playoffs, because I do pretty well. And there are people like, oh, this guy knows. And it's funny the way that breaks out. And you got to just take the good with the bad. If you want to celebrate the good, like if you want to sit here, because I'll put it out on IG and stuff like that, like crow a little bit when I nail some of these picks, and people are like, oh, look at you. I'm like, I will also respond to when I'm wrong. So I'm going to take my victory lap when I get it. But also to do that, you got to be able to wear it when you get one wrong.
I completely agree. And you mentioned you're good in the playoffs. You know who else is good in the playoffs? And you said it so yourself, was Joe Flacco. So what about him makes him good in the playoffs? I'm a Ravens fan, so I know how he can handle the playoffs. But what is it about him that keeps him good toward the end of the season in those extra winter months, I guess winter months, but then also he keeps getting jobs.
Yeah. Because he's an accomplished quarterback. And you look back at his time with the Baltimore Ravens, they were the chief competitor against the New England Patriots during that run that they had. And so Joe Flacco was always in the mix. Like, obviously they won a Super Bowl. There was another AFC championship game. I think was it Lee Evans? Lee Evans was the receiver who dropped one where you're like, oh my God, like they almost beat the Patriots again in the AFC championship game. And I really do believe that there are some players that just don't get caught up in the moment. And I think I truly believe it's a thing. And I know sports scientists and analytics people won't agree with this, but I'm like, there's people who rise to the occasion. You know, I grew up rooting for Reggie Jackson, who always seemed to shine the brightest when the lights were the hottest. And so for some players, they can just really do that. And I don't know, like Will Clark was like that too. Like Will Clark, I remember one time Will Clark said, if I was up in a bases loaded game on the line situation, I would hit 900. I'm like, well, then why can't you do that? But I mean, that's a lot to ask, but we all have friends who are like that, like people that we play golf with or anything like that, who are just unflappable. And as dumb as that seems, and it's dismissive to the world of sports, you're like, some people just are unflappable, and you put them in those situations and they thrive. Like people who take tests well and things of that nature. So I think that Joe Flacco is just one of those guys. I don't think that he ever got a fair shake. I don't think that he ever got the notoriety that he needed, because number one, he's going against Tom Brady every year. But had he been an NFC quarterback throughout his career for a decent team, like he can't be one of the garbage franchises, but for a decent team, like he would be celebrated as one of the top quarterbacks of his era.
And that makes me think of a lot of athletes who can just stay even keeled no matter what, whether it's the biggest of highs, the lowest of lows. They show up, and the person who I always think about, I mean, not necessarily the Steph Currys of the world are certainly there. Robbie Grossman, an MLB player, that's who it makes me think of. Doesn't matter what's going on, he stays even keeled. Those are the guys I like. You can somewhat of a super utility man, but I hear it constantly. It's the guy who just shows up, does his job, and stays even keeled. And no matter what the high pressure situation is, you're going to get a good, solid situation from him. It's so cool to see.
Yeah. And there could be a lot of pressure, on high priced players or players who've been celebrated, coming up through the minors, that, what happens when they get into October. And I think Bryce Harper is a great example of like a guy who really seemed to relish the moment and really stepped up. And this is a player that we've watched since his prep days in Las Vegas, that we've expected to do major things. And then he comes out and does it. And you're just like, yeah, you love this. Yeah. I really do appreciate seeing that. I know Angel fans get upset at me when I say this, but it's like, there's no reason to not like Bryce Harper. Like we can still back Mike Trout and still like Bryce Harper. Like it's not one or the other. We can celebrate both of them. I, of course, prefer Mike Trout, but I'm not going to dismiss Bryce Harper just to try to make Trout look better, like celebrate. Like it's really cool what he was able to do a couple years ago. My
least favorite baseball take is Bryce Harper's overrated. I don't think he's overrated whatsoever. Whoever came up with that storyline needs to stop making storylines.
That was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. No, that's
the thing too. I was like, wait a second, like how, like just what you said. And it's like when Chris Bryant had his first at bat, his first major league at bat, they were expecting him to hit the cycle. And that one at bat, It's like, you can't do that. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And then Bryce Harper literally not only shows up, shows out, and has the numbers to show. You even take the numbers away, he's a competitor that pissed people off too. It's my least favorite take. I hate that take so much. It makes
it is one of those things. And it, I don't know if it speaks to me, but like the kind of players that I like for instance, and I'm sure this will be controversial, but like Madison Bumgarner, to me, when we talk about pitchers of this era, now I live in Southern California, so it was like Kershaw, and they always talk about it. And I'm like, and they always just pretend like the playoffs, like, no, that's not, it's never his fault. Like, whatever. I'm like, fine. Like, I guess when Juan Soto's ball landed in the parking lot, that somehow wasn't his fault. But like Madison Bumgarner is a perfect example of like, when you're talking about whose career would you rather have, where a guy who played for 20 years was pretty great, he never won a full season World Series, or would you rather be the guy who won 3 rings in 5 years? I'm like, give me the 3 rings in 5 years guy. Like, I love him, and I love players like that. And I don't know what my point was other than just to drag Kershaw, but that's what I do. I felt that was probably the true thing. So I guess the Packers and the Dodgers are the teams I don't give the full credit to.
Yeah. And just before we move on, I want people to know Madison Bumgarner cannot hit. Stop writing that storyline too. He does not hit. Just something that gets me mad as well. You mentioned your stand-up.
What about Glavine? Can Glavine hit?
Like, it's a whole different like road to go down. But you mentioned your stand-up comedy, and it's an art that you've not only tried and you know, you're successful at, but let's talk about the art of it, because when somebody says, oh, Jess, you're funny, you should do stand-up, I say, no, that is not how that works. And I respect it too much. It's like the ocean. I respect the ocean way too much to go out there. And I hate when people say, you're funny, you should do stand-up. So tell me about the art that it takes. And you can be naturally funny, sure, but what is the process of it?
Yeah, there's different levels of it, you know, and it's okay to be funny and make your friends crack up. And you feel like a lot of times too, like when you have inside jokes and you have jokes that are very relatable to a specific group of people, like there's always ways to connect like that. But stand up is very different, where you've got a new audience each and every night, and you've really got to go out there and try it. Where when I go out and do stand up now, it's a little bit more difficult because my act gets a little dated because I'm not doing it as much as I was doing it. And I would love to perform. I'm actually starting to put together material for a special that I'm hopefully going to be recording in June. And so, but a lot, like, it's all about, like, you got to write a bunch of jokes. And then once you write the jokes, you know, we have a writer's room. You know, I have a couple of buddies that I write with, and we sit down, we kind of hone it out, hash it out. Like, what's the best wording? Cause like a lot of times too, it's like, how do you get the wording?
Yeah.
And then sometimes if you're not recording something, or you ad-libbed something during the show, and then you got to bug people like, what did I say? Like, I remember getting a laugh, but I don't remember, like, what did I say? What did I do? And it's a lot of repetition. And like anything else that people do, you got to practice at it all the time. There are people that get away with going up and doing crowd work and, you know, just kind of, hey, off the cuff funny. But the one thing about comics is that they make everything seem unscripted. So when you go see a show, and like sometimes there's parts of it where you're like, oh, he was up there ad-libbing, or she was doing this, that was off the cut. Like, no. Most of the time it's a situation that's presented itself previously, and you're just ready for it. And so again, it's just one of those things. It's not easy. And even funny people have to go through the trials and tribulations. And you see it too. You know, you go to open mics, and you know who's there, like, because their friends told them they were funny, but they don't have jokes. They're just trying to be funny. You're like, no, you got to set up punchline. What type of joke teller are you? Like, for the longest time, I was so worried about the dead spots, like setting up joke. Like, I could not have a setup be longer than like 4 seconds, because it would give me too much anxiety. So it was almost like I was throwing out one-liners, like set up punch. But that kind of gets too repetitive, and then people check out after a while. So I've been trying to, like, hey, like, for instance, David Njoku, the tight end for the Cleveland Browns, after a post-game interview goes, oh yeah, there's this guy at the NFL Network. Yeah, his name's Adam Rank. That guy sucks, which incidentally will be the title of my special. Adam Rank, this guy sucks. But like trying to, like, working with my friends, like, I need to make this, like, it's just not a setup punch type of joke, but like a story, like trying to be a story. Like Joel McHale's a great like storytelling comic. Like he's like, and he, you know, he sets up a lot of, and it's so great. And it's like, that's what I want to do. Like, that's the kind of person, that's the kind of like, I want to do that. And I want to kind of relate it to working and like going through it and everything. And I sort of tried out, I did kind of test a little bit of it on the NFL Fantasy Live show, running down myself and then going through like that. So I've actually recorded that, written it down and be like, how do I make that longer? So I'm trying to take a, you know, a 10-second sound bite and trying to turn that into like a 5-minute bit, you know? So it takes a lot of writing and a lot of repetition, a lot of practice. There's a couple of open mics around here that I'll be hitting up pretty soon. So it is a thing. Once the Super Bowl is over, then I'm going to be devoting myself to that full time.
I love that.
Outside of my AYSO team.
Oh, yes, of course.
The Lightning, the first place Red Lightning.
Wow. I knew I was in the presence of impressive people, but like, yes. Wow. But tell me about crowd work, because that's always kind of intrigued me when it comes to comedy too. I feel like that's like getting bigger in stand-up. And what are your thoughts on that and how crowd work is being portrayed these days?
One of my friends who's a comic absolutely hates it. He's like, don't you write jokes? But again, I think people are kind of prepared. Like there is an art to crowd work and trying to be as relatable. Desi Banks does a great job with it. And he's very funny. When you see his clips on YouTube or TikTok, anything like that, one of the reasons that it's becoming so popular is because that feels like the safest part of your act to put out on social media. You interacting with somebody is so genuine, like having an interaction with somebody. It's harder for somebody to steal. So if I went up there and did like a 5-minute routine on TSA, like somebody could watch that and then go around to comedy clubs and just repeat that and do it. So I think one of the reasons that we see so much of it online is because like you can't replicate it. One of my friends, Johnny LaQuasto, he puts up a lot of bits about him having a Persian wife. And it's funny because like that is so like that would be so difficult to steal that we see a lot more of it. So when you see it on TikTok, I think those comics just want to show like, here's something that shows how funny I am, but it is also something that you're not going to be able to steal.
That's interesting. Yeah. Cause that's your own. And that happens a lot. I see a lot of comedians complaining about that. Last comic question before we move on. What's a bigger heartbreak? Nobody laughing at your joke or getting a prediction wrong?
Oh, the joke is the worst.
Yeah.
The prediction, you're like, you're relying on somebody else. Like as long as I give you a reason, like the Browns, for instance, people are like, why didn't you like the Browns this season? Like, well, they'd missed the playoffs for 2 consecutive years. Coach is kind of on the hot seat. Deshaun Watson hasn't really figured it out with that team. They're great defensively, but that's very hard to get by in the NFL. You've got to score points. And obviously it went very well for them. And then you're like, yeah, okay, I was wrong. You just go, when a joke doesn't work, I mean, like, again, you got to have the same sort of resiliency to be like, okay. And especially if it's a joke that that has worked at other places where you're like, are you really like that? That's happened not too long ago. Like I was doing a set and it was a part of it. Like my opening stuff is usually like very, like it's not offensive. There's nothing like, you should just laugh. Like it's not, you're not going to fall out of your chair, but it's funny. And it's been funny for 13 years. So please, if you're not, and there's times where you're the part of it that sucks is you're like, I'm not going to connect with this audience.
Yeah.
Like if they're not laughing at this, we're going to have a very difficult time getting along. And that I think is the worst part. Cause like I've set it up to where like, it's a very like, hey, like this is designed to elicit laughs. And it's immediate and it's quick. And it's like I get my first punchline off within 15 seconds because again, this goes back to my paranoia and I want to show up on stage and let them know that I'm funny immediately. And if they don't laugh at this joke, which 98% of the time people laugh, when they don't, you're like, I am bleeped. It is bad. Like, no, we're in bad shape now. This might not, I might go to crowd work. I might just start asking people, hey, I noticed you're wearing, and like, because one time it was going so bad, but so a couple times, like one time there was a lady in the front audience who was the only one that was laughing. And like, we were sitting there and like, she was having the time of her life that eventually to the point, like I just sat down on the stage in front of her and I go, I'm just going to do this for you because nobody else cares. Like you guys go get drinks, go to the restroom, go see if you can break into the Yoo-Hoo room next door. I think Whitney Cummings is over there.
Oh, there you go.
This young lady and I are going to sit here and have a chat. And so that actually brought some people back in. It was fine. And then there was other times where I was just like, does anybody want to talk fantasy football? Like if any, like, forget it. Like you obviously don't think I'm funny, but if you want to know who to start this week, go out, throw out a fantasy football question. And people actually got a kick out of that. And so you try to rescue it that way, but like it's not that. And again, too, like if you try a joke that's new and it bombs, you could be like, oh, okay. I always thank them for not like if I'm like, hey, I'm trying out a joke, or I put out a new joke and it bombs, and like this happened recently where it's like dead silence. And I said, you know what? Thank you. Yeah. Because that joke is brand new. I just wrote it. It obviously sucks. Thank you for not even giving it a courtesy laugh because I don't want to go and break it out someplace else because here at Brea, you guys told me that it sucks. So I don't want to take it to Irvine and be like, don't placate me. I need to know. So if it don't make me earn it, it's fine. We'll move on. And then we just kept going and it was just like, you know, you just got to, again, like a bad prediction, you got to own it and move on.
When you remember those 98% versus the 2%, so 98% it'll land. Do you remember the 2% more?
Actually, no. Okay. I really don't. I blame the audience. No, never. That's another thing too. Never
it's not me with you. It's on them at that point. Yeah.
I'm never a blame the audience person. Like you can be like, they weren't getting, like we didn't connect, but I'm not angry at them. I'm like, listen, not everybody has to like me. It's fine. Like not everybody, like, listen, not everybody likes Diet Pepsi. Like I get it. Like it's very but Diet Pepsi is very popular. Not everybody likes it. Similarly, I feel like I'm popular, but not everybody's going to like me. It's fine. We can move on. I never blame the audience. You know, it's up to me. Like it is still my job. Like if you're not laughing at my initial like things, like then it's up to me to figure out. Like my job as the comedian is to make you laugh. So I got to do it and I got to figure it out. So I never blame the audience. I mean, I can recall those nights where it was rough and it's funny to talk about like, that, you know, didn't work out, but I really do celebrate when things go really well. Like I remember this time at Brea. There's been a couple of times at the Brea Improv where it has gone so well. Like you have a 15-minute act and Brea has got a clock in the back. So you know exactly the time that you have, which is funny because sometimes a comic, like this one time, this comic ran the light by like 4 minutes. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I couldn't see the sound. I'm like, there's a clock. Unless you are legally blind. Yeah. There's a clock and you know that you have 12 minutes and it went to 16. Like, just don't. And you weren't, and it wasn't like he was killing it. Which is another thing. Like, why did you want to stay out there? It wasn't going well. Like there's times where you're like, you know what? Like I went behind Ryan Niemiller one time and I was like side stage, like keep going. Like I actually don't want to follow you. So just keep going. You can eat it in my time. And he got off to say, I'm like, dude, you should have kept going. He's like, no, I didn't want to be. I'm like, when you're killing it that hard, like, bro, stay up there. You can keep going. God, there was a Chasey.
It's very courteous of you.
There was another Lacey. Well, oh my gosh. Why can't I think of this young lady's name? Balsham. Her last name's Balsham. And she was killing it one time. We were actually, this was a bar show. So it was like less regulated. And I was like, no, stay out there. Tracy Balsham. No. Why can't I think of her name? She's so funny. She moved to New York a couple of years ago. I'm like, stay out. Like you're killing. But like, there have been times where I was at Brea and I know what I should be ending at. Like, I know what joke I should be on at around the 13-minute mark. So yeah, we were doing 15 minutes. So no, it's 12 minutes. So I knew what joke I should have been on right at the 10-minute mark. And I was at my 4-minute mark joke. And I'm like, holy Lord, because you're not stepping over your laughs and the laughs, because you got it. Like, that's an art to it as well. Is like, you don't want to talk when the audience is laughing or doing anything. So you wait, you never step on your laughs. You just let it go and you just let it breathe. And then you come in with the next thing and you come with the next thing. I actually told that to Roger Goodell one time at the draft, the first draft in Chicago. He was sitting there and I just had a chat. I was like, oh my God, I'm just sitting here and Roger and like something about the booze. And I said, hey, I go, you shouldn't try to talk over the booze. He's like, what do you, I go, no, I go like, heat is heat. Like you still want to be like, you still want a response. It's a passion for the sport. So like, let them boo. Like, don't try to talk over because it's going to make it worse. So just be like, yeah. So then like he goes out there, like the next time he's like, all right, I'll wait. I'm like, yeah, Roger. And but specifically, like I do remember the times where it was going so well. You're like, I did about 6 minutes of my act in this 12-minute set, and it was wonderful because it was tough because like I have a big ender, and it's like, oh, how do I fast forward to the ending? Actually, I think I told them, I think I went through this whole thing like, you know what, you guys have been so great. Oh, no, that's not true. I knew that I had another good joke coming up, so I kind of fast forwarded to the one. It was actually a dig at the Raiders. So I actually fast forwarded to that. I actually shorted myself by about 45 seconds because the laugh I knew was going to be so big. And then I just hit it, big laugh. All right, that's it. That's my time. And then I bailed.
That's good. I would have continued because I like attention. But wait, so you're the reason Goodell kind of pauses during the boos now? Did you notice like a pattern?
He switched 100%. Yeah, he totally embraces it now. I'm like, you're the villain to these people. So you got to go out there and just wear it. Like, just take it. Who cares? They're here. They're here. Like the worst thing would be nobody being here. Yeah. Imagine having the NFL draft and nobody being here. Or would you rather get booed by 50,000 people? Like, just take the boos. It's what sports fans do.
Totally. It's like a rite of passage now. Like, it's weird if people aren't booing Roger Goodell.
100%.
You know? It's the best part of the draft, to be honest.
Oh my God. I love the opening. Although the last couple of years he started to revert. Like I gotta get it in his ear. I'll see him at the Super Bowl this week. Be like, bro, you got to let the boos rain out, especially when he goes to Green Bay this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like the best part. I absolutely love that part. And you mentioned the Super Bowl. So we have a Chiefs 49ers Super Bowl. What were your first initial thoughts when you thought about this matchup in Vegas?
I do like the matchup. I enjoy seeing the Chiefs. I didn't mind when the Patriots were in the Super Bowl every year either. I thought it was kind of nice. Like you get some repetition, you build up being a villain. You know, so I think it was the NFL memes site was tweeting out the whole thing about like, hey, you stick around long enough, you go from the underdog to the villain. And that's exactly what the Chiefs have done. They've gone from the team that everybody wanted to beat the Patriots, and now everybody's hoping that somebody beats them.
Yeah.
And it's fun too to see the 49ers back there and the story with Brock Purdy, because when you think back to Tom Brady losing Super Bowls to guys like Eli Manning, like he didn't lose to Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson or Matthew Stafford or anybody like that. He was losing to like Eli and he was losing to Nick Foles. Mm-hmm. So the idea that now Patrick Mahomes has already lost to Tom Brady, but losing to Brock Purdy, I think would be funny. Like, it's just like you're watching wrestling. You're like, oh, Roman Reigns lost to Kofi Kingston. Oh, that's a bad example. But like somebody like that, like somebody in the mid card as opposed to one of the main event guys.
And how did you embrace Taylor Swift throughout all of this? I have to ask.
I love it. I think having Taylor Swift there is an amazing thing. And I don't know why football fans always have to be so territorial. They're always worried about bandwagon people. And like, I was sitting out here when our team was 2-14. I'm like, who cares? Like you're not impressing me. I don't know why you're so fragile that having Taylor Swift there is bothering you so much. And I think it was Colin Cowherd who went through and did the math and like, she's barely on screen for a minute. And like, this isn't the first time that a female celebrity has been at I think what probably is the most threatening to guys is like Taylor Swift has enough money to purchase a team. Like Taylor Swift could buy the Chiefs. Yeah. Not that the Hunt family's selling, but like she could go buy a franchise and then just start trading everybody. Be like, all right, I'm gonna trade your favorite player just for sitting there. Like she should go buy the Panthers. Like get rid of like there's some of these owners are like, yeah, maybe Taylor Swift should own this team. And so I think it's just so threatening because like people don't come out like when The Rock's there, people don't go like, oh, here's The Rock. Like, duh, like it's very targeted towards Taylor Swift and it sort of it does offend me. Like I grew up watching Laker games.
Me mad. Yeah.
And they like anytime you watch a Lakers playoff game, like, hey, and like they would always start off with, I believe, Denzel. Like Denzel was always the leadoff guy. Hey, here's Denzel Washington. Here's Diane Cannon. Here's the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then it always ends with Jack Nicholson. No, and Lara Flamboyant would be sitting next to him for a certain stretch. Like, no, like, yeah, it was just part of the thing. Like, and everybody just accepted it. But now, because it's Taylor Swift and this young lady makes too much money, and there's a lot of people up in their feelings, a bunch of people who swore they were going to stop watching football years ago anyways, are now upset that Taylor Swift's there taking an interest. I'm sorry that one of the most talented pop stars in the world is taking an interest in our sport. That's what we want.
Yeah.
We want to grow the game. We want to embrace, like, my daughter loves when Taylor Swift is on TV. Like, back off.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's not ruining your day. And if it is, then that says more about you than it does her.
A tight end's girlfriend is enjoying watching him play football is what it is.
Yeah. Oh, poor you.
It's fine. It's totally fine. It's like male egos need to chill a little bit. Everything's going to be
a
lot of it. Let's shift to baseball because I know you above all else as an Angels fan. And I love seeing you at the Coliseum, which is always fun.
Yes.
But this off season, the Angels not as fun. No longer possess the name of Shohei Ohtani. But how did you feel? Did you think it was going to be any sort of a possibility that he would return to the Halos?
Well, I gotta say this: seeing Shohei Ohtani in a Dodger uniform didn't bother me as much as I thought it would, but seeing Ippei in Dodger gear killed me. That's the one that really, like, that's the one that's like, because like Dodger fans don't deserve Ippei. They just don't. And it bothers me. And I even said this to Marcus Grant, who and Marcus Grant's like, who's that? And I'm like, of course, like, you're a Dodger fan. You wouldn't know anything about baseball. Like, of course, like Dodger fans are like, who's Ippei? What do you mean? I'm like, his translator, the guy who's always by his side, the guy who finally waved at my daughter. So for the last number of years, that's the one thing about Shohei leaving. And my daughter found out, and she's not happy about it, but it's okay. The one thing that I can say throughout this whole thing is that I have no regrets on any. I don't remember the last time I missed one of his home pitching appearances. My daughter and I, and eventually my son started to come along too, would always go. We would buy tickets in the bullpen and right above the bullpen, excuse me. And the funny thing is, I posted a photo of my daughter in her Ohtani jersey from behind the bullpen, and this idiot is all like, nice seats. And I'm like, do you understand that we're there early enough to watch? We're 6 feet from the greatest baseball player of all time, watching him do his warm-ups for 45 minutes. Like, you will never get as close to Shohei Ohtani as we were in that moment. Like during the game, like, it was okay, but like, it is, and it was a cool thing too, because all the Angels pitchers would come out to the bullpen and they would kind of gather around while he was warming up, and they would do a thing, and like nobody would look in the crowd because everybody's asking for baseballs. But one time Patrick Sandoval finally looked at my daughter. It's like, my 7-year, now she's 8, but she's like, my 7-year-old just wants a wave, Patrick. She doesn't want a ball. Can you just wave at her? And he looked up, gave a quick wave, and then went about his business. And Ippei wouldn't crack, but that's okay. I did make him bust up one time, the last time I was in the Angels clubhouse. So that was fun. But it's so for me, I can say that I was never I got as much out of Shohei Ohtani in his appearances as possible. Didn't miss many of his games, I can't remember missing one of his last pitching starts. Like, and I know he was hurt at the end of the season, but like saw all his last pitching starts, always made it. It was an appointment thing. My daughter and I went to at least 25 to 30 games a year, probably more. Like, so it's like, I exhausted every part of it. And so if you're celebrating the fact that Shohei Ohtani is at now part of your team and you don't go to the games, then I feel very bad for you. I did truly believe that Ohtani was going to return. Like, I don't understand that if you're Artie Moreno, who had an opportunity to sell the team, if you were not willing to match the Dodgers offer, then why did you keep the team? Like, why are you keeping it then? Or even at least bringing that guy on as a minority partner. Like, I think about what happened with Stan Kroenke when the Rams moved. Georgia Frontiere wanted to move to St. Louis, but she had to pay off all the NFL owners. And the only way to do that was to allow Stan Kroenke to be the minority owner. He had a 40% share with the opportunity to buy the full team after her passing. Artie Moreno, whose kids do not want to own the Angels, had the same opportunity to either, number one, sell the team, number two, like bring on, I think it was the LA Times guy, bring him on as a 49% owner. And then when you're done, you can move on. And then he or she will take over the team and it'll be good. And then we just have an infusion of capital because the Angels need to go back and start reinvesting in the minor league system. They need to reinvest in the stadium. There's a lot of issues that they need to, that you need somebody, you need an infusion of cash. And I understand that the price tag for Shohei Ohtani seemed daunting, but like, you know how much money you were making off this guy.
Yeah.
You know that it's a bargain. Like, that's the one thing about the Dodgers is like, they're like, I think that they got a bargain for $700 million. Like, that's fine. Like, they'll make that money up. Like, it's okay. Like, I don't buy into the, like, well, the Dodgers are a more like, no. Like, people in Japan love the Angels. They didn't care. They just love the Angels as much as they love, like, there's not going to be an uptick in, like, it's not like, well, now the only people who care that way are the people in America. Yeah. Like in MLB. Cause I honestly believe this is my theory too, is I honestly believe that if Shohei could have picked where he wanted to play, I think he would have been the Angels who weren't willing to go to 700 million. I feel like MLB wouldn't let him go to Toronto and they made him go to the Dodgers. Like, you got to go to the Dodgers. Like, nope, we're not. Nope. We're not letting you go out of the country. You got to go to the Dodgers. I will die on that hill. Like, there's no way. Like, he wanted, like, trust me, bro. This is my theory, that he really wanted to go to Toronto, but Major League Baseball is like, nope, you're not getting on
thriving in Toronto. I think he would have thrived in Toronto.
It would have been amazing. Yeah. It would have been great, but MLB doesn't think that way. They're like, we need you in Los Angeles, which is dumb because it's the West Coast.
And it shows how much of an impact he has, like to have a conversation with the league. I mean, we don't really know that this happened, but it just kind of
crazy theory. Yeah.
I love that theory though. But I also, but it was interesting because when Dave Roberts was talking during the winter meetings, this was before the signing, of course, he didn't even touch on the fact of who Ohtani was as a baseball player, but who he just was as a person, a franchise, the makeup of him. He comes as advertised and then some. Like, I've covered so many of his starts at the Coliseum, and people come from all walks just to watch him. And you're right, like, just for his warm-up.
We were there. That his first game as an Angel in Major League Baseball. We were both there at the Coliseum. Yeah.
And just like you said, his warm-ups when he's throwing the ball against the wall, like, that's just like people stop and stare and they cheer for him. And he's so amazing about it all. I know I talked to our front office and we go up 20 to 25 credentials when he's in town. It's all Japanese media. It's the coolest thing. Yeah. And everybody's so sweet too. Last one before I let you go. Because I know you watch a lot of, baseball, but what is something that you think baseball media should take on that NFL is doing a really good job of when it comes to covering the sport?
Wow. That is that's an interesting question, because I think, we see what Ben Verlander has done, like kind of glomming on to Shohei Ohtani and kind of riding that wave. And that's great, and it's fun because it's, one of my favorite players, or it used to be one of my favorite players. So that was cool, but it's like, there's other guys in the league. Like, can we start celebrating? I'm sure Juan Soto will see it now that he's in New York, and we'll get a lot of that. But I wish that, it doesn't have to be Aaron Judge, because I know that the New York media picked that up, but we really need to celebrate. And I don't know how, I think this has been something that Major League Baseball has been trying to crack for the longest time. Like, we should know who all the Braves are. Like, the Braves are such a well-run organization with superstars. And then I would defy the lay person to name one member of the Braves. I guess Acuna, they would be able to identify. They probably still say Freddie Freeman. Yeah. So it's like, you got to kind of we need these highlights out there. Like, you need to have the quick things. And I think if there was some sort of they got to have a home run. I don't know what it is. I think because
it could be like they do a TBS situation again, because I can name all the TBS Braves. Remember the TBS Braves? Like something like that. Like maybe just put him on TikTok more or something where it's
I will fight for Dale Murphy to be in the Hall of Fame just because of TBS. You know, it's like, I agree with that. Like there's plenty of baseball on, but it's got to be on the social media, and we need to see more of the home runs. And we need to celebrate it more, and people need to like really like the NFL has Red Zone, and it's on one day and it's condensed to one day. But I think if we could just like see all the bombs like for the course of a day, just strung together. That's the problem too, is like baseball's spread out over a lot of hours, typically at night. I wish there were more early games. Like maybe that would get people into it a little bit.
I'm there with you. I love that idea.
Yeah,
I love that idea.
And people work from home now so much more. Like it's easy. Like that's all right. Let's go. Like I love day games. Like I will go through the Angels schedule and be like day game, like clear my calendar. I want to go to these day games, which are rare. But I mean, if they gave away stuff, I'm sure people would show. I don't know what the Angels are going to do now, because like they'll probably still have Ohtani giveaways. Like, oh,
they do have good Angels do really well with the giveaways. I will say that,
because it was Ohtani and it was wrapped around him.
You could give away like an Ohtani burp and people would show up.
Yeah,
yeah.
We bottled them,
like bottle and like air that he's breathed, and they would. Honestly, it's a great idea.
They would pay great money for that. Maybe the Dodgers will start doing that. Well, I hope the Dodger fans are less fighty now. Like you got Ohtani, like stop brawling in your stadium. Don't besmirch Ohtani.
What is there to be mad about? You have Ohtani.
No, there'll be fights. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Adam, you were amazing. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it.
That was Adam Rank from NFL Network. I could talk to that man all day. And once again, thank him, not just for coming on short and to the point, but, you know, from believing in me in the very beginning when I was just a baby blogger myself. And I didn't think anybody gave a shit who I was. But anyways, I'm still reading all of your DMs. I'm so thankful for each and every one of you for listening to our show. I know Philip behind the scenes puts in a lot of work, so I'm thankful for him. I'm having a blast with Short and to the Point, and I'm so appreciative of you guys tuning in each and every week for Short and to the Point. I've said that a lot on the Comeback and Awful Announcing. I'm Jess Kleinschmidt, and we will see you next time.
Want even more short and to the point? Follow Jessica at KleinschmidtJD and head over to thecomeback.com and awfulannouncing.com.